Question number 3 in the name of Deputy Luke Ming Flanagan.
Thank you, Cian Corla. The question is basically how will this proposed permit system work for people on NHA Bogs, and also in relation to how were people notified about this. And I asked that in the context of a statement the Minister made on Shannonside Radio when asked were people contacted, and his answer was they probably were.
Minister.
Thank you very much. As the Deputy is aware, the recently published review of Ireland's raised bog natural heritage areas, which is available to download on my department's website, provides details on future arrangements regarding turf cutting on each of the 75 raised bogs NHAs. Based on a comprehensive scientific assessment, the review has proposed a reconfiguration of the network of raised bogs NHAs, which will improve conservation outcomes by increasing the area of endangered habitats within the network of sites. At the same time, it will exclude the most heavily cut sites, thereby avoiding any impact on over 80% of active turf cutters currently in the NHA network, from over 3,000 to around 500 cutters. The review envisages the complete or partial de-designation of 46 existing NHAs where turf cutting may continue into the future. In these de-designation cases, it will not be necessary for individuals to seek consent to cut turf. The effective cessation of turf cutting on 36 NHAs by the 1st of January 2017, in order to preserve their conservation value, management plans which will be subject to environmental assessment will be prepared for each site. Turf cutters and these sites will require consent from my department before cutting this year. The proposed de-designation of 25 new sites as raised bogs NHAs later this year to replace the habitat lost through de-designation of the more heavily cut sites. Many of these proposed sites are in public ownership or have relatively few or no turf cutters. It may be noted that it has been possible to subdivide current NHAs in such a way as to allow for a continuation of turf cutting in one part and conservation elsewhere on the site. This has resulted in a total of 82 separate units within the original 75 NHAs. In terms of persons requiring consent to continue cutting this year, my department has written directly to over 3,600 landowners who may have an interest in the NHAs where consent will be required from this year. Site maps were enclosed with these letters, as well as advice on how to obtain an application form for the compensation scheme or consent to continue cutting. Last week, notices explaining future turf cutting arrangements on these sites were placed in local newspapers, which circulate in the areas where the relevant NHA bogs are located. Any turf cutter required to cease turf cutting on an NHA is being offered compensatory measures similar to those available to turf cutters from raised bog special areas of conservation. Such compensation will be available to qualifying persons with effect from 2014. Application forms for the compensation scheme or for permits to continue cutting over the next 3 years are available on request from my department. Relevant contact details are published on my department's websites.
Deputy Flanagan.
Thank you, Minister. When the advertisements were placed in the paper, turf cutters contacted the number that was made available and were told that resources are stretched by the MPWS. They were told that they haven't got the permit system ready. I contacted them 20 minutes ago and they told me again resources are stretched. They don't have anything ready. They couldn't tell me the details of how the permit system worked. Actually, initially they wanted to know before they tell me anything what bog I was cutting my turf in. People are going to be going out in 3-4 weeks' time, depending on the weather, to cut their turf. And as of yet, no permit system has been organised or put in place. Now, it is important to register or protest at the idea that anyone would have to ask permission anyways to do something they've done for centuries. It's like a child in school having to ask permission to go to the toilet. We're not children.
I'll let you back in. Thank you. Minister.
Well, certainly, I'm glad that the Deputy raised this matter here, and I will make immediate inquiries as to the availability of permits, and I think that this service should be available to those people who are affected, and I will certainly ensure that it will be. And if there's a problem with the existing system, certainly we need to improve it, because I agree with the Deputy. I think these people deserve the right to know how to apply for the permit, if they have to get a permit or not. I know we have written to them, 3,600 letters have gone out, and advertisements have been placed in the local newspapers where there would be affected bog owners, but certainly if there is still confusion, I'm going to ensure that that's going to be improved, that means of communication. So I would like to thank the Deputy for raising that matter here this morning.
Deputy Flanagan?
Yeah. Sadly, as of yet, there is no system in place, and you have advertised that there is a system in place, and there isn't, and you've apparently written to thousands of people, but still there was no system in place. So that is unfortunate. That's a failure on your part, Minister. Now, the same mistakes are yet again being made in the bogs that you're talking about taking out and the ones you're talking about leaving in. Because we now have a situation in Carricknoughton, near Athlone, where pasture land is now being left in one of these areas, and someone will now have to ask permission to use that land. And if I can just use my final 30 seconds, just to make a point, because I don't know will it be made in here today, I just want to condemn whoever went out and shot that white-tailed eagle in Tipperary. They're gurriers, and that's what I think they are for doing that. And I know many turf cutters feel the same. It's a shameful thing to do.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any pasture land being included in turf cutting areas, but certainly you've raised a point here, Deputy Flanagan, about the permits being available and advice being available, and I take what you say very seriously, and it's something that I will address immediately, and I think it's very important. This is very sensitive for everyone, and I know that obviously as Minister I have to enforce the law and ensure both European and national laws carried out. You're representing your constituencies here, so we're coming from different approaches, but at the end of the day, if a system in place, it has to be communicatable to the people, and also the service must be available to the people as well. So certainly I will ensure that it is, and it's something that I will follow up immediately.
Thank you.
And I join with you in condemning, and I did so yesterday, the people who I suppose ruthlessly shot the eagle, and when we are trying to repopulate the country with eagles, I think that everybody joins with me, and would like to welcome Deputy Flanagan's statement here on that this morning.
The question is how many people have signed and up to the final agreement on compensation, and maybe you can make a statement on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Under the cessation of turf cutting and compensation scheme, 3 types of legal agreements have been and are being issued by my department. The first is a final legal agreement for qualifying turf cutters who are signing up to the annual payment of €1,500 index linked for 15 years. The second is a relocation interim legal agreement for qualifying turf cutters who have expressed an interest in relocation, but no relocation site is currently available for them to relocate to. This relocation interim legal agreement provides for the payment of €1,500 index linked, or a supply of 15 tonnes of cut turf per annum, while these applicants are awaiting relocation to non-designated bogs. The third is a relocation final legal agreement. This agreement has been issued to qualifying turf cutters where a site has been assessed as suitable for relocation and is ready or can be made ready for use for domestic turf cutting. Turf cutters who sign and return the applicable legal agreement to my department will also receive a once-off incentive payment of €500. 1,711 legal agreements have been issued, and my department is continuing to issue agreements to qualifying applicants. Applicants have been requested to return the completed legal agreements within 4 months of the date of issue. 1,209 legal agreements have been returned to my department thus far. The majority of legal agreements returned are final legal agreements, as most of these agreements are from qualifying turf cutters who have opted to receive the annual payment under the scheme. To date, in the region of 1,050 once-off incentive payments of €500 have been made to applicants in respect of these legal agreements.
Deputy Flanagan.
Minister, there is an impression being given by you to the media that the vast majority of turf cutters on these so-called SACs have given up cutting turf, signed up to what you're planning. But the reality is, if the figure was 1,209 out of 9,000 plus Turberry right holders and landowners in those so-called SACs, that is not the vast majority. It is about 15%, and the other 85% are being abandoned. Well, they're not being abandoned by me, but they're being abandoned by the state. Now, I was interested in an earlier answer that you gave on the whole Bogs issue about the fact that you seem to think that the de-designation of some of the NHAs has not left in parts that weren't de-designated grasslands that farmers need to use. You were saying that none of them have been put in those areas. Since you've said that, I have received 2 messages, one from a landowner in Cashel Bog in Leitrim whose house and land is in this designated area, and another from someone in Carricknocton who has acres of grassland within the area that you're not going to de-designate. So what you've said earlier is incorrect. You have now created a situation where people are going to have to ask permission to put cattle on their land. And it looks like people are going to have to ask permission. Can they open the front door of their house now as well? Because you've actually left houses in these designations. Earlier you said, smiled and kind of suggested, no, this wasn't the case. It is the case. I can bring you to meet the people.
Minister, finally.
What I said was that there was no turf being cut on grassland. Just could I say that the fact that this is rather complex because sometimes obviously bog wasn't registered in people's names and so on, and to have 1,200 legal agreements returned to my department is quite an achievement, because anyone that's familiar with Turberry rights and bog ownership, in a lot of cases bogs were not registered in people's names. It's just complicated. When bogs were being passed on either through purchase or inheritance, sometimes the bog wasn't registered either, and this is a challenge, I suppose, that we are facing as well as the affected people. And could I say as well that not everyone with Turberry rights were active turf cutters, and as the Deputy would be aware, it's just people that were cutting turf for the previous 5 years. So not everybody that owns a bog or that have Turberry rights in a bog will actually apply or will have this legal agreement applied to them. And just could I say as well about the example with grasslands, obviously when these SACs were designated first, they were based on information that was even going back to the 70s, 80s. And obviously there were some land reclamation, bog cutaway, and those people are being informed now. Anyone with any connection at all to the NHAs in this instance are being informed. So it's much broader than the people cutting turf on it. But if you have particular cases, and I mean this, Deputy Flanagan, particular cases, just bring them to my attention, because it's not the intention here to prevent anyone from carrying out their normal farming, agricultural practices at all. So if you have cases, please just bring them to my attention and I'll get them investigated.
Thank you. I'm afraid that completes the time for PQs today.